Welcome to Build Out Brief. This is Jim Kunkel, and I so appreciate your support of the Build Out live stream that broadcasts each Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. The live stream that you're watching right now will be starting in just 1 minute. Let me take this opportunity to talk about Build Out Brief. This content series is a result of viewers like you who overwhelmingly requested that I add a supplemental series to Build Out that centers on professional business topics, is more focused, and global on guests. If you're thinking about starting a live stream, then StreamYard is a platform for you. It's what I use to build you Build Out Brief. After the stream, see the comment or the description section for my special savings referral link. Now, when it comes to having a professional live stream and winning over viewers, you need to make sure that your graphics and supporting promotional items are the best. All of the creative content for Build Out and Build Out Brief are designed and produced with Canva. You should check out Canva. See the comment or description section for my special Canva referral link. I'm Jim Kunkel, and welcome to Build Out Brief. Today joining me is MJ Callaway from the Bounce Off broadcast. Hey MJ, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fabulous, Jim. It is so good to be with you again.
It's great to have you. And for everyone, this is going to be a two-part series related to goals and more specifically SMART goals. And I believe, MJ, you're going to offer some other types of perspectives related to goal setting, correct?
I will, yes.
So let's go ahead and let's talk about establishing SMART goals for sales representatives. I am a senior sales professional, and I've always had the opportunity before you get to the end of the year to generate your sales goals based off the revenue target for the upcoming year. And when you look at the goals that you need to set, you need to have what they call SMART goals. And these are goals that are very important, and they show the results that you need to achieve to be able to accomplish what the overall company or the organization's objectives has to achieve for the upcoming fiscal year. Now, what are SMART goals? The way to look at it is they break down into this let's say nomenclature. First is specific. You know, what needs to be accomplished? It needs to be very specific set of a goal. The second is that they have to be measurable. They have to be something that you can really look at and you can benchmark and you can make adjustments as you need to. But they also have to be achievable. They have to be very time sensitive and realistic in nature. And the thing, they have to be doable as well. And then relevant. You know, how do they align your goals to the overall organization's goals when it comes to looking at the next year's revenue generation? And then the most important thing, the T, which is time bound. They have to be, again, very specific. They have to be maintained. And then also they have to work towards that development within that annual or calendar year that you're working on. MJ, is there anything that I left out regarding SMART goals in a simplified manner that I described them?
You hit it. Every single category there.
No, the first question I would have for you is, what's your experience with working with SMART goals? Have you as a senior, seasoned sales professional, have you established SMART goals before, and do you work with clients related to SMART goals?
So it's interesting about that. Depending upon which career I was in, some companies we had SMART goals and other companies did not. I had worked for one company. They didn't even tally how many people came through the door. So it's a little hard to figure out how many sales you need to get if you don't know how much traffic you're getting in the door. And I have found that out too with a couple of clients. And the first thing I say to them is, you can't improve anything that you don't track. So if you don't know who's coming in the door, if they're qualified, how much traffic, then how can you actually figure out how many sales you need instead of basing it only on revenue? So it's going back to move forward.
You know, when I had the opportunity to work on SMART goals, and I currently do that in the my current career that I have right now, working for an association, is that really the revenue target is what drives all the activity. And so once your company or organization sets a revenue goal, every department, every person within those departments needs to take that and divide that out to lay out exactly, specifically, what do I need to do step by step, and have it documented in something that can be reviewed and benchmarked against the results. I need to have that in writing. And I think what's wild about goal establishment, it's like going to the dentist. It's like, pulling teeth. It's something that a lot of salespeople really hate to generate the goals. They like to have the activity, they're fearless when it comes to that, but for some reason they get a little nervous around goals. Why would a salesperson, what do you think people get nervous when they have to establish goals and SMART goals?
I think at times because they don't actually know how to do it. They have never actually been taught. No one ever sat down and worked with them through SMART goals. So for them to sit down and actually do it, they don't have anything to go off of. And I'll give you an example. So I had worked for a national builder at one time, and we had a sales quota. So our sales quota was 3. And it was an on-your-site builder. So we had to sell 3 custom homes every month. Well, when you think about it, okay, you're talking about revenue. Well, we didn't have a revenue based. It was 3. So when you think about it, what if I am selling 3, I'll just use $100,000 houses because of course it was more, but yet another coworker was selling 3 $500,000 houses. So that really messes up revenue goals. So depending upon who the company is and what their overall goal is, you really need to spell that out.
Yeah, that's very important to point out. It's not always tied. These goals are not always specifically tied to revenue generation. You could work for a trade association, and what it comes down, maybe it's a number of memberships that have to be generated during the year, or certain activities that need to be in place to be able to generate sustaining revenue, so to say, or income to be able to maintain that organization. The other thing, too, that I always find interesting is that when you're working with an executive level in the C level as well, they have everything planned out when it comes to annual plan and 5-year plans. But when it comes to goal setting, a lot of times you're presenting your goals and they're just not quite what that executive or the C level really expected. What do you recommend when it comes to presenting these goals to those above you?
So one of the things that I did, and I'll go back to the builder, I had asked a lot of questions. So what is the average sale per meeting? Because our meetings were 2 hours long, the initial one. And I was told it was 1 in 15. So you would have 1 sale for every 15 meetings. Now, whenever someone is building a custom home on their own lot, there's so much more that goes to it. So of course there will be more than 1 meeting. Well, when I sat down, I thought about that. I thought, oh my goodness, that's 30 hours for 1 meeting with 1 client to get 1 sale. So then I asked more questions. So that's the average. So what is someone who's good? And it was 1 in 10. I said, okay, what is it for someone who's really, really good? And then it was 1 in 5. So my goal moving forward was to be 1 in 5 or better, which I did hit before I had left the company. So it's looking at what is a bigger goal, or what can you measure? In that case, I was measuring, for me, it was time in meetings, because I figured the more sales I could get for those 15 meetings, the more money I would make, the more money the company would make. So it's looking at sometimes more than just projections. Mm-hmm. So what was interesting was that manager had said no one had ever asked that question. We have those statistics, but nobody ever asked it. But I was looking at it from a time management perspective on how much time, I was given away without producing. So it's taken a step back and then going, to your superiors, to your executives, and then see how the goals work for you and then explain it that way to them. Yeah, and that had worked for me.
Yeah, the statistics are super important, and to really expand on your example. I work for a national roofing company, And when I had come on board as a manager, really took a look at the production of what we had was basically an inside telemarketing team that would do what I call the front end of the funnel. They would find a prospect, they would qualify the prospect, they would take them to the point of proposal, and then an outside rep or a regional rep would take over at that point. Because of the amount of investment in a regional rep on the outside was much higher, so you wanted them really in front of the closing point of the sale versus out there prospecting and doing proposals and everything. And what was interesting was that when we go through and you look at the production level, you can see where there are some efficiencies that need to be addressed. There might be some effective areas that are very clear. And then you're going to have top performers, and you want to benchmark them against a team. For me, it was roughly on any given time about 12 individuals that were on my team. And you could look at the number of calls they had to generate, the number of prospects they had to talk to, how long it would take to go from point A to the proposal. And you could generate a better understanding and really kind of flow it out, so that if the decision was, okay, we're going to have this number of staff. Well, if we do reduce staff, it's going to impact the potential for sales. And if we increase it, then that also gives us the ability to do more. But if we don't have the coverage on the outside in the field, then it doesn't make sense to add more people on the inside, because there has to be a good balance between the inside, or let's say the pre-sales or the pre-close sales, and then also going into the closing aspect of it. But also too, what I thought was interesting was when you're running a telemarketing team, it's easy for the bosses to say, if people make more phone calls, we're going to see more activity. But there's only 60 minutes in an hour. So that if they are literally spending that bulk of that time between prospecting calls, qualifying calls, and then following up on the opportunity to submit a proposal for a project, then you just cannot squeeze more time out of an hour. And so setting that expectation made a lot of sense to the executives. And then when they looked at goals for the year, they could balance it out and say, listen, if we want to go to this next revenue level, we're going to have to invest in staff and other type of upgrades regarding equipment and how we go to market and things like that. So there's so many considerations that have to come into play, that these SMART goals really kind of feed a lot of other avenues and a lot of other areas in a company.
They sure do. And as you were saying, if a manager or an executive says make more calls, well, do you want those calls to be quality calls? Or are you just smiling and dialing? Because if it's just to hit numbers, and this has happened, if you have the front end who they're just trying to hit numbers and plug it in, then the person who follows them, it screws up all their numbers because they're not quality. So doesn't it make more sense to have quality calls rather than quantity calls?
Yeah, you want to focus on the quality of that funnel. And in professional sales, there is cycles that are involved in to go from a prospect to a closed deal. Sometimes it can be relatively fast, but at least on the industrial side that I've been focused on for years, some of these things, they can take months or sometimes up to a year to be able to really fruit into a sizable project that you close on. And then the other aspect too, I think that what's unique about looking at statistics is what type of training might be required. And as I mentioned earlier, you identify exactly who are your top performers, and you're looking and you're observing them, you're studying them to understand exactly what are their behaviors, where are other areas that they need to be have some fortification or strengthening of their training. But also when you have your other performers, again, decisions sometimes are made to reduce headcount, based on performance, and performance is a good indicator of future success. So you want also to look, is there an area where I could invest some training and help take a representative who maybe is not quite where they need to be, to elevate them and get them into a top performer role. And then now I've got a bigger pool of top performers than a few top performers and a majority of, let's say, not quite there yet performers.
Definitely. And usually with performers, there's three levels. There's your newbies in the field, and then there's that middle line, and then your top performers. Well, the people in the middle, those are the ones that can either go to the bottom or they could go to the top. And those are the ones to really think about getting training for. Of course, we want our new people to get training too. But that middle lane, you have the opportunity when you give them more training to make them top performers. Now, attitude does play into that. Sometimes people don't want to perform, and then maybe they don't need to be there, which is a topic for another day. But Jim, we were talking about statistics, and I had pulled this. 55% of people lack basic skills, sales skills. 55%. That's crazy when you think about it.
It is.
And then one other statistic is that the national sales closing rate, and this is for business and industry, so sales in those two industries, is only 27%. Leaves a lot of room for improvement. So where is the miss, in all of that? Is it in training? Is it in the way that the sales process is set up? Is it in not giving them enough time to qualify, to move them to the next level? So I had mentioned before, go back to move forward. So if you go back and you start looking, where are you losing customers? Help your employees, help your sales team understand, where are they losing people in the funnel or in the process, the sales cycle, and then help improve each of those steps along the way.
Another thing, too, that I'd like to touch base with you on is regarding how training is done. A lot of companies, the process is, our revenues are down. We're not quite where we need to be. Okay, let's go and start bringing some training in. And the training's kind of really hodgepodge. It's nothing that's really structured, and it's not something that's really symbiotic for the organization. And what I mean by that, in a perfect world, if I was running a company and I had a sales team of outside and inside, I would want to do a program that actually benefits both the inside and the outside at the same time. It would be the same approach. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to make sure that I send a message to those on the inside that there is future opportunity for you to become an outside representative if you so wish. But we're really focused on improving your skills and ability. And maybe I am paying a commission or incentive, and that's a good incentive itself to make someone want to become even better. When you work with companies, and you can say you don't want to share this information with me, are you seeing the same type of trend where it's kind of, they're kind of hodgepodging things together?
So it depends really on the company, but the companies that I have been working with in the past 5 years, they are training all departments. They might not be training at the same time. And I'll give an example. A plumbing company that has 5 locations, and it's a pretty well-known plumbing company. So they have the inside sales, which does all interior. And then they have outside sales, which does commercial. And then they have counter sales. All 3 departments have had the same training, tweaked a little bit according to what they're selling, but all of them have had training. The owners, they invested in their employees. And that's what a lot of times people don't, especially if sales are low, or revenue is low, or, we hit COVID and people pulled back. That's the time that you want to jump in. Use that time, use that downtime to train your teams.
It makes so much sense to do that. And, the other thing too, that as a professional, you don't know everything. And it's always good to talk about new techniques, learn from professionals like yourself that are out there and educating sales teams on how to be more effective, be more efficient. But the other thing too that I like about it is it also shows to your company that you are very open-minded, that you are willing to be adaptable to fit whatever model moving forward. And I'm 55 right now, and sales is so much different than what it was in 1989 when I first started selling. And the one thing that is still true today that it was back in 1989 is we rely too much on our current customers. And so prospecting for me has been something that I really worked hard at. And over the years, I've become fearless. I can pick up a phone and call anybody and talk to anybody. But it's something that you really have to become comfortable with. And it takes skill, and it does take some time to be able to overcome the hesitancy that you might have to do prospecting. No one in sales likes to prospect, but that's where you're going to find new business, new opportunities, new people to work with. For prospecting, have you found that the same when you train people in prospecting?
Oh my goodness, the phone that weighs about a pound feels like 500 pounds to everybody. So there's a transportation company that I worked with. And what I loved about this company was the owner, the president of the company, she would attend every training because she wanted to know what her guys were doing, and at that time, her sales team was all men. And they were not, at this point, they were not used to prospecting. They didn't network. They didn't like prospecting. They didn't like picking up the phone and then walking them through. So I would go with them on the first couple of times they went networking so that I could help them, just, smooth that path for them and then work with them to create a script that they felt comfortable with and one that wasn't manipulating, one that was very conversational because these guys were in the business for a long time, 30 some years. So they needed a script that was more comfortable for them. But the phone, yes, it feels like 500 pounds until you get accustomed to doing it.
Yeah, and on the topic of scripting, what I've learned related to scripting is not that you're going to sit there and read it. It's something for you to understand. And then you typically will have scripts for different situations and scenarios that happen. It just helps you be more forceful, a little bit more confident when you're talking to an individual, a contact, a prospect, or a customer on the other side, to be able to say certain things because the goal of the salesperson is to lead down a logical pathway that you get the agreement and the yes. In that process, you might pick up on some qualifiers that basically disqualify, the prospect, and maybe they are really not serious at this time to do a contract or to be in a buying position. Maybe they're just searching for information. So you want to be able to pivot and be able to provide them the information, but then also too, you need to be able to figure out exactly when do you think or when does it look like they might be in that buying mode. And then you can schedule a follow up or callback before that time hits again. But the prospecting scripts, a lot of times I remember dealing with it. They're like, well, I don't want to be a robot reading it. And that does not mean that in relation to the scripting. The other thing I always enjoyed too was you get your team and you actually just go and make some prospecting calls with everybody listening.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it the right way, it doesn't sound like it's a speaker call. If you have a good quality audio system for a phone system, it works really well. And it helps you get over the fear a little because now maybe you're in a group of a half dozen or 24 sales professionals on your company or your organization, and they're listening to your prospecting call. And then they offer advice because we all want to help each other out. And I always thought that was a great way to really do it because a lot of times you'll go into training, you learn something, you memorize it, you go ahead and you respond back to the trainer. Then you get your little certificate, you walk out and you never apply what you just learned. And it's wasted calories at that point. It just doesn't work. And so you're always trying to find ways to engage your sales team, but also benefit them by maybe putting them on the spot a little bit by, okay, well, you learned it. Let's show me how you do it. And I always like that way of doing it. It's a great learning opportunity. MJ, we were talking about, SMART goals, and we got into talking about training and other things related to sales, which is great. It's a great episode. And then the next episode we're going to go into is dealing with SMART goals that supercharge your sales, and taking these SMART goals and then putting them into play, and then also some things we need to think about: stretch goals. We need to also think about benchmarking and reevaluation of these SMART goals that we've established. Is there anything that we didn't talk about related to establishing goals that you would want to leave with the viewers?
For this one is, I would say, go with whatever you have gone in the past. Say it was you made 15 calls a day. So think about for the next set, say the following month. And we always did restarts at the beginning of the month. So for the month of January, say you're making 15 calls a day. So then in February, think about making it 17 calls a day. So upping that level of what you can, that's still doable, because if it isn't doable, and we'll talk about this next, if it isn't doable, you won't do it. So I would look at, what have you done in the past that has worked for you? And are you ready to up it a little bit?
Bounce up.
Bounce up.
So that being said, now I mentioned Bounce Up. Let's talk about your brand new series, broadcast, doing extremely well. Bounce Up with MJ Callaway. What are some of the topics you cover on Bounce Up?
Thank you for asking, Jim. And also thank you for your help. Jim is behind the scenes with me. On some he's co-hosting. So the Bounce Up broadcast is every Thursday at noon. And we are covering topics that are related to performance, results, and revenue. So, and there will be times where we'll be talking about overcoming, because especially in sales, we are always overcoming some type of a challenge, or in business. I mean, think about this past year and a half and all the challenges that we've had to deal with in business. So the entire broadcast is always about bouncing up, bouncing up higher and stronger than you were before.
Very good. MJ, how can people get in touch with you? Social media, email, websites?
I am on all the social platforms, especially LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. I do answer any messages that come in. And then my website is mjcallaway.com, and that's Callaway. So mjcallaway.com. And if you look under resources, I have a lot of free resources. I have a number of them around sales also. So feel free to go ahead and check out those free resources.
I encourage everyone to check out her resources. Also, too, on LinkedIn, follow MJ Callaway and look for posts weekly regarding Bounce Up broadcasts Thursdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. MJ, thank you for this first part, and you and I will be back on Thursday here to talk about, again, putting these SMART goals into revenue action. Let's call it that.
Sounds like a plan, Jim.
All right. Thank you, MJ. Good night, everybody. Have a great evening.